This is the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. We're marking Indigenous Peoples Day. The second year it has been a federal holiday, but not the second year it has been celebrated. And we're grateful to have Barbara Lawrence from the Suquamish Tribe with us. I'd like to begin by quoting Chief Seattle from 1854, that every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanished. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is within the ancestral territory of the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, basket weavers, the Suquamish live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's central Salish Sea, as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Suquamish live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855.
I just wanted to focus on this poster for a little while. It's Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. We have a stellar jay flying through the poster and recognizing this special event. A stellar jay is in several stories and sings warnings and announcements to people and animals. This one is bringing the Lachute seed words of Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. This art was created by Neayuq Ahvakana, who is a Suquamish tribal member, and my cousin's daughter. And she has done many small and huge art, as you're going to see throughout this presentation.
And we actually have, this is our first in-person hybrid meeting with Barbara. And so many of us have been really longing to be in the same room with you, not just Zooming. And it's such a, in fact, I was going to say, maybe you want to show the vaccination T-shirt to see where we can be here, but maybe I'm pushing your.
Oh no, I agree. I think it's a great idea. I brought some more of Kate's work here, and so we I don't know if I've done 3 or 4 events so far, but this is another one of Neayuq Ahvakana's work, which is the vaccination shirt. I got vaccinated, and her art. Now, she uses traditional art and modern interpretation. These 2 figures are from the Salish, or the different Puget Sound Salish tribes would use these similar carved out of cedar humanoid figures that would be smaller than an actual adult human, but pretty big, and tapered down to a point. They'd be shoved into the sand at a location where there would be several of these, as if they were pulling in a canoe. That's how they would be put into the sand, and as if they're pulling in a canoe. And the shape of the canoe is just in the sand. And then the healer would be inside, in between the rows of these canoe pullers. And then they go into the spirit world. And then he finds whatever is needed for the sick person that he's attempting to heal. And so that's in just a little story about what, where Neayuq Ahvakana drew her inspiration for the vaccination shirt. And of course, our tribe was very, very involved in getting our people, our employees, our school district, anybody in the community who wanted to be vaccinated, because in our lived memory, diseases can, decimate a population, and we wanted to survive this one as we barely survived other ones. So this is more Neayuq Ahvakana.
And celebrating that vaccination for all of us allows us to be here together, which is so beautiful.
Yes.
Got some more? Do you want
I do have some more. It's a little out of,
well, we can come
out
back.
of order. This is Neayuq Ahvakana's All Children Matter orange shirt, and the Orange Shirt Day was very recently. It's inside the school year because That one of the sad stories is that boarding school, or here in the United States, or residential school is what they called it in Canada, both governments took the children of tribal families away to boarding school to separate them from their families, to separate them from their culture, to separate them from their language, and to raise citizens instead of Indians. And sadly, what happened was a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect, and a lot of death. And then the hiding of that, the hiding of the cemeteries by not even having it be actual cemeteries or bulldozing them or what have you. And so having those, tribal people always knew there were cemeteries. Tribal people always knew that there was these graves of children. We just, in some places they were marked, in some places they were rows and rows and rows of unmarked, and in some places they were not. They were just out there somewhere and then being discovered. So in a previous presentation, we talked about boarding schools and my father's experience, and then my experience going to visit Chamawa outside Salem, Oregon. So in the spirit of this, so there was this one young boy, and I want to say it was in one of the residential schools, that his grandmother gave him a brand new orange shirt. And that was the day he went to boarding school. And when they got there, they cut his hair and took his shirt away and put him in the uniform of the school, and he never saw his orange shirt again. And then when he was an elder and telling his story, he talked about that orange shirt that he was so proud of that his grandmother gave him on the day he left. And so that was the inspiration of Orange Shirt Day. And why it's inside the beginning of the school year is so that we all can show our, that we never forgot, that our support of these survivors and the ones we lost, and that we'll never forget them. So that's what Orange Shirt Day is, and All Children Matter. This is a Kate Ahvakana design, and she drew from, her mother is Peg Deem, and her father is her father is Larry Ahvakana, her brother is Dale Ahvakana, all of them artists. And up here you'll see the Lashute seed. I'm not a great Lashute seed speaker. Someday I hope I will be. But as these artists bring the traditional and contemporary art, they often bring with it the language so that we can, make it a living language again. So there's another Kate Ahvakana. This one's a little older. This one's a few thousand years old, and I'm not going to be able to say the name or names of the artists here that created this. And we call this boulder. I just love it so much. I know Bainbridge Island has a name for it, the petroglyph. We have a name in our language for it, and I don't know what it translates into. Again, I'm not a language speaker, but there's I have a few words. But in one of the early, I want to say cover, but someone in like the 20s or the 50s put a sheet on top of it and did a rubbing, and that was a good image. And then there's the opposite, which is someone took charcoal and put it directly into the carvings and took a photograph of that. In one of those, under this person right here, there's another person being held upside down. And that's my favorite image because it's just more meaningful. To us, whenever there's a large petroglyph, and this is a big one, it's a huge boulder. And this is only seen from the water side, so you have to be in your canoe traveling, and you would see this with contrast if the sun and the shade. But our eyes, when we're traveling in somebody else's territory, we're looking for these kinds of things. We're looking for signs from the peoples whose land we're traveling in so that we would do what they direct us to do. A petroglyph is a sure sign. A petroglyph outside your territory is a sure sign that you better put your paddles up and start singing who you are, where you're from, and what you want. so that then they know that you're coming in peace. If you see a petroglyph and you just keep pulling like you're on your way to land, it'll be assumed that you're coming in a war-like manner and you'll be met like that. So I thought the guy hanging upside down, being held upside down, was somebody who kept pulling and didn't raise up his paddles. So that's the story. That's my story of this. That's my interpretation of this. And I just love it. We don't have a whole lot of petroglyphs in our territory that we know of. A lot of our stuff is underwater, and because of the rising waters and the actual plate tectonics. And Dennis Lewerk and Lenny Forsman could go farther into detail about this stuff, but there was I don't want to say how many hundreds or thousands of years ago that things shifted and things are different than they used to be. And now, because of humans, we have more of that to deal with.
What's next?
One more of Kate Ahvakana. Isn't that gorgeous? So this one is, this was made by Kate Ahvakana in honor of transgender people and everybody. We hold up all people. And so this, if I could speak Lashutsi, that's what this says. And so now you see that the Lashutsi is larger than the English, which is appropriate. And then the beauty, the just graphic and design beauty of this piece. I'm giving this piece to Bainbridge Island Senior Center. There's many of these, and they're not for sale. They're just for giveaway. We want you to have it. I just think it's so substantially beautiful.
It's so beautiful, and we're so grateful to have this. Yes. How gorgeous is this? And some of you know my own daughter is transgender, and I'm so proud of her. And I just love this image of generosity and kindness and inclusion. We definitely have plans already for this. Thank you so much.
Yes. So you guys have welcomed me here a number of times, and I've said sad stories, and I thought, there's a lot more sad stories, and I could do that. We could do that. You could handle it. I can handle it. We can just keep going with all the sad stories. But I thought, how about we celebrate something? How about we bring happiness? And how about I show you different artists, different musicians, different musicians, interpretations of our people that you haven't experienced yet. So I think we're going to experience some happiness right now, and it's all going to be in Lashutsi. So if you'll turn your attention to the screen, you're about to see Calina Lawrence, who's another relative. Not everybody is a relative today, but we are a tribe and we are related. But this happens to be my cousin's daughter, Calina Lawrence.
خيد شلب أس والله خجل أس خيد شلب أس والله خجل أس خيد شلب أس والله خجل أس والله خجل لو والله خجل أس خيد شلب أس والله خجل أس خيد شلب أس والله خجل أس خيد شلب أس والله خجل أس والله خجل لو والله خجل هون يفتي كو يفتي سواتو فتن أتلو جاز جدار بجل برهرب أوك تست أسب پت أسب پک اولل پر هرب اوک تست أسب پت أسب پک اولل Twoshuti das hali, twoshuti das hali, as haliti, twoshuti das hali. As hey chalap, as hey chalap, as hey chalap, as walach chal, lu walach chal, as hey chalap, as hey chalap, as hey chalap, as walach chal, lu walach chal, kwaf walek, abalek, obab ob, slachilch ti doof suck wab, told all chad doof suck wab, hat ti slachil, as halichad, hat ti slachil, bak ti tsiya, hat ti slachil, asil del bufchel, guadzadar twol shooted, us halit, ti twol shooted, us halit, us hey chalap, as hey chalap, as hey chalap, as walach chal, lu walach chal, as hey chalap, as hey chalap, as hey chalap, as walach chal, lu walach chal.
Oh, my gosh.
I know, it was
So what I have to say about that is not only is Calina incredibly talented, she splits her time between Suquamish and Los Angeles, where she goes back and forth. In Los Angeles, she has an office and an agent, and she works a lot in the industry, I guess they call it. And one of the amazing things that she did was she was a advisor to Grey's Anatomy when they were doing a show that was based on the pandemic and based on the arrival or not of the PPE. And you might recall this one if you watched that show at all. There was an elder of the Suquamish Tribe. Of course, he was an actor, and he was admitted for heart problems. His granddaughter rushed over there, and she was very, very pregnant with child and worked at Seattle Indian Health Board, which is a real physical place. And she was explaining that she needed to get back to work, but she wanted to check on her grandfather and this and that. And so there was lots of scenes. And in the background, they had received a huge giant delivery of what they thought was going to be all the PPE that they were waiting for. And as they were opening up these boxes, the doctor, and I want to say it was the redheaded doctor, and I'm not going to remember everybody's name, but that he was being very frustrated that it wasn't the PPE, that it was all the same thing. It wasn't the masks and the gloves and the N95, and it wasn't everything that they needed. It was like one thing and all of that. And she said, well, at least you're lucky that what you got was some form of PPE. Do you know what they sent to us? They meaning the federal government, and that was a different administration at that time, sent to Indian Health Board body bags. And this is the truth. This is what they sent to Seattle Indian Health Board was body bags. And the Seattle Indian Health Board wasn't the only Native clinic that received body bags from that administration. Okay, so beyond that, Calina's advice was like she got to name certain people. So the grandfather was my brother's name, who was Bill Lawrence, William Lawrence, and he was, spiritual advisor of the Suquamish Tribe, spiritual leader of the Suquamish Tribe, which my brother's just a regular guy. But she got to put names in there. And eventually that granddaughter was trying to visit her grandfather, and because of COVID, they had to be on different floors. And then she went into labor and had her baby. So they used laptops so that the baby then could have the ceremony that the baby's newborn Native children have ceremonies. Certain songs are sung to them, certain words are told to them as soon as possible when they're born. And that all had to be done by Zoom with these laptops from the cardiac floor to the neonatal floor and all that. And so it was a very beautiful show. And I used to have it memorized, which season and episode, but it's easily found if you Googled it. So those are some of the things that Calina does besides producing amazing music. The truth about Calina is her parents are both Suquamish tribal members. Her biological father is my cousin. Neither of her parents were clean and sober in her early years, and she ended up in foster care, and she ended up in a series of foster homes, and some of them were wonderful, but for whatever reason they couldn't stay, and some of them weren't wonderful, and she ended up in my brother's home, and that's where she stayed, and that's where she was raised, just a couple houses down in tribal housing where I live from me. And so I got to see her a whole lot and watch her turn into this amazing person. Lots of kids from foster care don't have happy endings. And she is changing that. She's changing that statistic, and she's changing it for lots of other people too. The song that you're about to hear is also written by Calina, like the Twilshoot Seed one was. And this one is called Don't Count Me Out.
Release my heart from grief and negligence. I guess I handle pain with elegance, but I'm screaming, when is enough enough? This can't be it, I'm losing grip, I'm giving up. Back in the day, this world took my innocence. It's like trauma means the same as indigenous, historical, current and the in-between. From age 3 all the way to age 18, ward of the court without a soul to trust. Whole families lost, then forced to readjust. Now 24, yes, my knees buckle. I must alleviate these red struggles. Addiction, poor health, jail, and suicide. These things are killing my people nationwide. Addiction, poor health, jail, and suicide. These things are killing my people, genocide. No more surviving, it's time to thrive. It's time to thrive. If it's death or life, don't count me out, don't count me out. No more hiding, it's time to shine. It's time to shine. When the people rise, don't count me out, don't count me out. Spiritual warfare transfers into the physical, pain still there. Staying alive is a miracle. Used to the struggle, so I fought myself, giving people rebuttals when they offered to help. Trusted no one, stopped giving thanks for life. Creator shook me. Truth is I almost died. Took tragedy for me to open up my eyes. Couldn't recognize abuse cause it was normalized. I am the sacred. Took time to understand my ancestors are with me. I'm held by their hands, I lost hope. Against the wall of my throat, my heart broke. Couldn't be the story I wrote. Perpetuating violence, sacrifice my health, only down to break the silence when it helps someone else. Can I help the world before I help myself? The strength inside of me is truth of the self. No more surviving, it's time to thrive. It's time to thrive. If it's death or life, don't count me out, don't count me out. No more hiding, it's time to shine. When the people rise, don't count me out, don't count me out. The stars are bursting inside us, it's time to show. We're beautiful beyond imagination. There's no time like the present for us to grow. I hear
Okay. All of that's so meaningful. All of it. And oh, by the way, we didn't say, and we should have, if you have questions, just raise your hand. Just, you don't have to wait till the end if you are curious about anything. There is another musician who's a Suquamish tribal member, and his name is Robert Gemmell, or I call him Bob Gemmell. And he, like Calina, he lives in California. He lives, I believe, in Sacramento, and he works for the Indian Health Service, because any musician, pretty much you have to have a real job. And by the way, Calina, I know she has a bachelor's degree, and I don't know if she has a master's degree. A lot of the people that I'm introducing you in here are very educated, and Bob is too. Bob has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. He is, I think, he is the director of the western half of the United States Information Systems Security, or something like that, for Indian Health Service, which is a really big agency. He's a brilliant man, and he's, in his core, he's a thinker, he's a writer, he's a musician. So he wrote a song having to do with Chief Seattle and home, and it's called Confessionary Tree. And so we're going to hear that one, see that one now, I believe.
Or soon.
There's a signal on the wire, but it's buried in cold. From pole to pole, it winds down the road. There's a ghost in the rhythm and a riddle in the key. From the wall on a wire overhead, down the street to a whisper underneath the confessionary tree. Hey now, will you finally see where the river runs red and the poles unfreeze? Hey now, will you finally see, whittle your name on the confessionary tree? Truth breaks high in a hurricane's path. Increments of change that can be measured in a lab. Chief Seattle sleeps, there's a stain on the sun. His final act of conflict when the day was done was to lay a rose across the barrel of the gun. Hey now, will you finally see when the river runs red and the poles unfreeze? Hey now, will you finally see, tie yourself to the confessionary tree? From the basement of your soul to the hole in the sky. Now you're in a voting booth, and you don't know why. We all get lost, and we all get found. From the bars on the cradle to a hole in the ground, to a tree on a hill at the edge of the town. Hey now, will you finally see when the river runs red and holes unfreeze? Hey now, will you finally see, will your name on the confessionary tree? Hey now, will you finally see when the river runs red and holes unfreeze? Hey now, will you finally see, tie yourself to the confessionary tree?
So Bob took his inspiration from Chief Seattle's speech and Chief Seattle's message about the environment, and Bob and many of us still are very concerned with the environment. There was a time when I was young, in my late teens and early 20s, where I had a job interviewing elders of the tribe, the oldest people at that time. You know, they were in their 70s and 80s, and they remember when the Depression happened, and it didn't bother them at all because, well, nobody was hiring Indians for work anyway, and so the lack of money wasn't a thing, but access to food was, and so natives knew how to go get clams from the beach and mussels from the beach and salmon and, you know, berries and roots and shoots and all that. Time now, it was several years ago that students from Chief Kitsap Academy entered a competition, and all the schools that were participating had to put together their study. It had to be scientific, and it had to be about the environment. And when they were done, they went to Washington, D.C. to present their work. Almost all the other schools were private and wearing uniforms. Suquamish, it's not exactly a private school. It's anybody can apply to go. You don't have to be Native to go there. It just is predominantly tribal, and these students, you know, had their best blue jeans and their best T-shirts, but not uniforms. And they presented back in Washington, D.C., and they were taunted and made fun of by the other students from the private schools in their uniforms. And in the end, and our students presented the study of the ocean acidification and the damage that it does to the shellfish, and that being the largest part of our diet, and the tragedy that would be if that was allowed to continue to happen. And they won first prize, and you know, it didn't matter that they weren't an expensive private school, and it didn't matter that they weren't wearing matching uniforms. It mattered their work, the quality of their work, the meaningfulness of their work, and they won, and they were written up in the New York Times. Is that the Gray Lady? The New York Times. And so the environment is as important to us as it always was, and whether it was Chief Seattle, our oldest elders when I was young, my friend Bob Gemmell, or our young people today, it's still incredibly important to us. Another very how do I say this? One of the most important cultural identifiers of Suquamish people is hospitality. It's incredibly important that we are hospitable to whoever comes to us. And so Bob, my friend Bob Gemmell, was disturbed by the treatment of these people that were walking all the way from South America all the way up to the United States border. And he was so disturbed by how they were being talked about and referred to in the United States that he had to do something. So he wrote a song, and that song is called Caravan.
The bell rings once for the weary traveler, the road will rise up. The bell rings twice, it's the toll of the carpenter, the road will rise to you. You are so far from home, debes viajar con fe. You are not alone. Will you ever see the child that you left behind? The road will rise up. Every step is harder than the one before. The road will rise to you. You are so far from home, debes viajar con fe. You are not alone. San Pedro Sula to a place that you don't know, the road will rise up. The bell rings now for the pilgrim on the freedom path, the road will rise to you. You are so far from home, debes viajar con fe. You are not alone. The bell rings once for the weary traveler, the road will rise to you.
Similar to the words we just heard, it isn't something that it's always been comfortable being Indian in a non-native community. And my family, for economic reasons, moved away from Washington when I was young, and so I had to go work it out in the suburbs. And it was hard to carry being an Indian. Like, for instance, when I was in 5th grade, I had this teacher, Mr. Johnson, and he was sort of unpleasant. And one day we were in class and he was sort of ridiculing me, about being Indian. And he said, "Bobby, what do Indians do for fun?" And putting me on the spot. And so I said something kind of smart ass, and he grabbed me out of my chair and just beat the hell out of me in class. And so it was like, after that, I really didn't identify so much as Indian among my peers in school. And it was later that, I sort of owned it, and coming back to the reservation and coming back to Suquamish, really, spending time with elders and people, really, I don't know, it touched something in me. I think I write from a more sensitive place now. I don't know. It's kind of funny. People say, well, you're Suquamish or you're Indian, so you must play Indian music. And if I'm Suquamish, whatever I play is Indian music. So I don't feel pressured thematically to do anything at all. I just write what I write.
And you're changing the world with Indian Health Service.
Right. Yeah. I've got a day job. I work for Indian Health Service, and we're currently, like this Friday, we're doing we put together a youth regional treatment center, and it's our second one in California for Native youth who are having mental or dependency issues. It's a resident center that, we bring them in and take care of them and try to support them. And so our grand opening is this coming Friday for the second facility. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, I don't know that people over here really know what Indian Health Service is.
Good point.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So Indian Health Service is a federal agency, and over decades and centuries, whatever, the Indian tribes have had a changing relationship with the federal government. And right now, it used to be that, okay, we had a treaty, and so therefore the government's obligated to provide health care, and they would, and they have hospitals, and the Indians weren't so much involved with administering or providing that care. Well, what's happened over the last several decades, since the 90s, is this move towards self-governance. And when you become a 638 tribe, that means you are now taking over all of your operations. And so what we do now is support Indian health through our facilities, but more importantly, support tribal sovereignty by turning that over to tribes. You manage your health care, and we'll be there to help. And that involves us managing patient records, databases, things like that. But hopefully, if I do my job well, and we all do our jobs well, we won't be necessary after a while. If I'm successful, my job will go away.
Wow. Did Indian Health Service have a lot to do with getting the vaccinations to the reservations?
A lot. Yeah, we were deep in that. In fact, if I can be immodest, we actually outperformed most other public health sectors. We got on it quick, and because we can move, we're not a huge agency, so we're a little bit lightweight, and we can move fast. And tribes are the same way. The beautiful thing about tribal governments is they tend to be small and they can move fast. They have agility. So when things needed to happen, we were able to work directly with tribes, get the vaccinations, get everything set up so people can get access to the medication in a highly efficient way. We were actually, like I said, outperforming the commercial health sector.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that was my experience when I got my vaccinations. Was the system that the Suquamish Tribe had was just well planned and well orchestrated. And when I later was talking to some of my counterparts at the North Kitsap School District, they were just in tears that it was us that offered the vaccinations to them.
Yeah, and you're right. And Suquamish should be proud, because I was watching that from afar down here, and watching the effort the tribe put in during the pandemic, and it was phenomenal, really good. And there are a lot of tribes down here that performed well also, and it made me proud, really, to see what was done. Yeah.
In the beginning of this presentation, we said that this is our first time in person, because we've been doing these. I've done several all over Zoom, just over Zoom. This is my first time in this facility to do a presentation, and we attributed that to the vaccinations.
Yeah, and may I say, you've done an amazing job. Thank you for this.
If you went to bobgemmell.com, you would find his music and find Big Medicine Head and be able to acquire any of that music that you love. I have convinced him to send me a packet of his CDs and a stand to put in the museum, Suquamish Museum gift shop and the Port Medicine Enterprise Casino gift shop, so that I can, or maybe the Mossy shop, maybe all of our gas station convenience stores, so that we can get more of his music out there, because I think it's very, very meaningful. And like I said, I just showed you two emotional ones. Okay.
I'm so embarrassed.
Where's the demerits? You got two demerits there.
Putting $5 in the bad person box.
I think that was to lighten us up a little bit.
It was
so.
from Shanghai, China, so probably pretty important.
I'm going to take you back a little. I am not an artist, and I didn't come here to talk about my art because I'm not an artist, but I did make these hats. And why I brought them here is because I want to take you back in time to see that our culture is traditional. It's from the earth. We are from the earth. So Indigenous people, I don't know if you've ever heard this definition of Indigenous people, but we're not just from a place, we're of a place. These are three different styles of cedar hats that I've made. I made this one for my nephew, James. He's very tall. He's a DJ. He owns his own design build company. He has a big personality, and so I thought the hat needed to be big and tall and have this flash on it. And so I put this. You can buy sheets. I didn't know this till a couple years ago. You can buy sheets of abalone that you then run through a paper shredder. It has to be straight up and down paper shredders that matches the weave, that matches the width of the weave that I use. Different people use different weaves. I use 1/4 inch. And then you can incorporate it into the weaving. And so I thought his hat needed to be like that. I always put a bead on the top of every hat I make so that it's easier for people to tie their eagle feather or whatever feather, but usually an eagle feather to something. Because once they dry, it's hard to deal with. So putting a big cobalt bead or cobalt style bead. This one is for my 26, she just turned 26, my 26-year-old granddaughter, my oldest grandchild. And this is for her. Not Ellie's just a teenager. So Ellie also has a hat. I've never sold a hat. I've made however many. I've made them for family. I've made them for my children, my 4 children, almost all 12 of my grandchildren now, and then nephews and nieces and friends. The first person I ever gave a hat to, Ron, was on your board, not your board, but the Bainbridge Island board. He's a photographer. He's also a fine woodworker. How can I not remember his name?
You're in the senior center.
So anyway, so I didn't know him as a guy from Bainbridge or a fine woodworker or on your city council or whatever it is. I knew him as the guy who came along with the very first canoe journeys, the very, very first ones, and took pictures and was willing to teach tribal members photography and all that. And then he's been on all of them. I believe he's been on every canoe journey except the one that we just had over to Blake Island. He wasn't on that one, but it was really only trying to be respectful and responsible about COVID or the possibility of a new strain or whatever. We did this one after not doing any. For 3 years, we did this one just to Blake Island for 3 days and back, just to get in the canoes and have that time with each other. He wasn't there, but the first of anything inside our way, when you create the first of something, you give it away to somebody. And so my very first hat I gave to him.
Ron Peltier.
Thank you, Ron Peltier.
Oh, okay.
Ron Peltier, thank you. That was from the man behind the curtain. And so Ron Peltier got my very first hat. And then after that, it's been pretty much family and friends. Oh, Joe Davalos, who was my superintendent of Suquamish Tribe's education. I gave him one. And this one is being made for Ellie's mom. And I decided she needed that special, and as you can tell, I'm still working on it. It's not finished, but if you get the right light, you can see that it's mother of pearl sheets that I ran through the paper shredder to get this. I thought that she needed some white light in her life. And so I'm put that on hers. And so what I wanted to tell you, and Ellie, would you help me by passing these around? And you can hold on to them and look at them upside down and backwards in any way you want. You're going to notice my mistakes. But that's why I'm not calling myself an artist. It's one, I'm not that good, and two, I don't sell. I just give them to people that I care about. And maybe someday I'll be good enough to.
Barbara, is the orange thing the frame that you work on?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So way back, pre-contact to non-Indians, these hat forms would be carved out of wood, and now we've progressed styrofoam. And I know Eddie Carrier, who lives on the beach in Indianola. I mean, he lives in a house, but it's on the beach in Indianola, and things wash up. Just the topography of things just wash up on his beach, and he'll go out there and he'll grab big chunks of styrofoam and carve them into the shape of a basket or a hat or whatever he needs. And so there's these now. So you can buy these in any number of all of these shapes. I have all of these shapes in styrofoam, but I also have two now, ones carved out of wood that are permanently attached to a Lazy Susan. I get them from this guy in British Columbia, this artist in British Columbia that makes those for us. And those are spendy. And then what you do is you're back to the old fashioned ways where you have I don't quite know how it's going to work, because when you have that, you have a big heavy rock on top to hold this down. Like when I'm doing what I'm using styrofoam, I have these push pins that I push in and keep the shape. And of course you're working with cedar bark that you've also made into strips, not through a paper shredder, and through what's called a jerry stripper. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's a way to strip leather. It's also a way to strip cedar into strips. And so you take these and they're wet, and then you start off the top, and then you have a flat, heavy, very smooth stone that you set there. And then every so often you rub it down the hat as it's being made on the wooden frame. So that's the difference. And while I have the two wooden frames and I've been told how to use them, I haven't yet used them. So I'm gonna get better, and I'm gonna move on to that.
Approximately how long does it take to finish one?
So this is what I was told. By the time you sit down and start weaving, half your work is already done. And why is that? Because whenever the dogwood is blooming is when you go out and gather the cedar bark from the tree, and you have to do it a very certain specific way. You have to choose a tree that you could put your arms around. You have to put your hands like this wide somewhere towards the base of the tree and use a knife to make a slice, and then you pull and pull and pull, and you've already looked up around the tree to see that this is the place where you're going to get the longest piece, because there's the least branches as you go up. And you only take one strip. Unless those trees are going to be logged, then you take all of it. But if you're in a forest and you're just visiting and asking permission and collecting, you just take one strip and then go to a different tree, one strip, go to a different tree, one strip, go to a different, and you do that. Well, before you leave that tree, first you've asked permission from the tree, you've sang a song or made a prayer, and then if it comes off easily, you've been given permission. Then you separate, while you're at that tree, you separate the outer bark from the inner bark, and you leave the outer bark there. You've told the tree what you're going to use this for, and then you wind that up and set it down and get another from another and another. And you do the same ceremony at every single tree. You ask permission, you tell it what you're going to use it for, and you go on. You gather enough to get you through the year while the dogwoods are blooming. It's just something that symbolizes this is the time, and this is the place. And so, so then you have what you have. So then you roll those up into reels, and you have them stored in your house, and you wait at least a year, and then take them down and then soak them and then run them through the jerry stripper and get your strips. And that, it sounds easy. It's not. It's very, very difficult. And usually they're also thick. So you can separate each one of those into two. So you have twice as many as you think you do. And that I haven't mastered yet. I have not mastered that. So and then I can't walk on uneven ground anymore, and I can't look up and look down, or else I get vertigo. So I have to send grandkids out. And then luckily I have a bunch, and then or I'm left to buy the already prepared product, which is incredibly expensive. Why I brought you through all that is because I wanted you to understand how far in the past we are, and we're still tied to that past. We still care about those trees. We still care about the environment that the trees are growing in, and that still informs us. Even if somebody's never woven a cedar bark hat, they know what they are, and they know what it takes, and they know when I give these to my children or my grandchildren or my friends, they're deeply moved because they know what it takes. And that art informs each one of us. It informs all of us of the carving, the bentwood boxes. Do you know what soap berries are? Mm-hmm. Those are white berries, and why I don't know why they're there in June and they're there in October. I don't know if they're an actual berry. I don't know, but I know that our people call them squassum, and I know we pick them and we whip them into a foamy stuff, and we call it Indian ice cream. And I know that the spoon that we use to eat Indian ice cream is only used for eating Indian ice cream, and it's really elongated and it's gorgeous, whether it's carved out of wood or shaped out of a horn or out of silver. It's very ornate and very elongated and very elegant, and we only use that for Indian ice cream. And for adults, Indian ice cream is what it is. It's foamy and it's interesting and it's tart. For children, they want berries in them because you want to mix some salmon berries or some huckleberries or something because it's too tart. Well, I know that beauty of that squassum spoon, and I know there's a meaning for that. There's a reason that we were placed in this geographic location where there was so much food and so much water and so much land and so much time that we could gather all the things we needed to for food, clothing, and shelter, and we had leftover time. So we had leftover time that we could do art. We could create art, magnificent art. We could create beautiful homes, and in those homes were filled with art and blankets, like you wouldn't believe, the soft Salish dog wool blankets. And we could create so many of them that we could just amass stacks and stacks of them, and stacks of baskets and hats and canoe paddles and so many things to then have a generous potlatch giveaway for somebody's rite of passage, for their age or for their marriage or for their death or for their memorial or for an accomplishment they made. All of that informs us. All of that informs us. And this last artist I'm going to talk about, well, he's enrolled in the Port Gamble Sklallam tribe. He has Suquamish blood, and because I just plain love him. His name is Jeffrey Veregge, and And Reed is going to show us numerous pieces of his art. Now we're going to go into the mod, like art, native art, pop art, sci-fi, comic books,
Superheroes, right?
superheroes, all that, all informed by traditional art. So this is Jeffrey Veregge. He is the same age as my oldest daughter. And while Reed peruses through different works of Jeffrey's, I'm going to read something to you. Oh, first, Reed, at some point, can you show the little video of Jeffrey actually talking about his art?
Yeah, I have to, I didn't know which way we were going to go.
Thank you. I thank you so much. You're the great and wondrous man behind the curtain for us. So
Right, and just as Oz was a big sham, it's up to you to make the most of this. But yes, we will look at the video here.
Do you want to say a little bit about the shapes?
So in every one of his pieces, in every single one, whether it's influenced by Clint Eastwood or the Red Wolf or Batman, you will see the shapes, the actual design, the form line of Coast Salish art. So it didn't matter what pop art he was going for. His tribal reality is there. So you're going to actually see Jeffrey and hear him talk
Soon.
in an interview that he did, and then I'll read something. Well, Reed again shows you more of his things.
That's what I thought he was. And I remember thinking, though, as a little boy, that my dad was a cowboy when he went to work. That's what I thought he was. And the Indians were always depicted as savages on screen. They were the worst of the worst. And I thought my dad was the hero. So one day, my mom drops a bombshell on me. She says, "Jeffrey, do you know that you're Indian?" I looked at her and said, "Don't tell Dad." My dad is not native, he's German-Irish. And I didn't want my dad to shoot me and kill me because I thought that cowboys killed Indians. I've been into comics. I can't remember when I wasn't into comics. When I was a child, it just enhanced my imagination. It just kept the worlds alive that I loved. X-Men in particular, they were constantly doing good and trying to make the world a better place, but they were hated because of who they were. They were hated because nobody understood them. So it provided me a sense of comfort and a place to get away from everything, at least I could go there. And then when I wasn't reading them, I was drawing them, trying to just prolong that feeling. Natives in comics, natives in cartoons, unfortunately weren't far from the Western stereotypes. You'd see us being portrayed as dim-witted savages, that we were always out to get the hero or cause mischief or trouble. Now, I'm all for mischief and trouble. I like that, but to just to label us and take the ugliest stereotypes that you can find of our people and put them on screen, and you're putting in front of children, you're telling them that this is who you are, this is how the world sees you. That just adds to that anxiety that you're already feeling, because you know that you're different. You step out in this world, you think that the world is really out to get you. I'd battled depression my whole life. I've been in fear of everything. It's anxiety, just accepting who I was and having to love that I'm a nerd. I mean, even today, this era, you still don't, it's hard because I was picked on for this. It wasn't until I went to counseling, started getting medication, that I learned to love and accept myself. And at that point I said, you know what, I need to start making art for me. I don't care if it sells, I don't care if it It does great. I just know that I want to make it because I decided at that point that if I'm going to tell a story, I need to tell my story. The only story I know is being native and on the reservation. But these are 2012. These are my first pieces. The bat is actually what put me on the map. I just knew that I was having fun and did Batman in a way that I thought would still feel native. Same thing with Spider-Man. Red Wolf was Marvel's first Native American character. He came out in the 60s. Later on, he had his own series. When they decided to bring him back, however, they wanted to get rid of a lot of stereotypical things that you'd find in that book. Marvel brought me on for Red Wolf for that specific purpose. When they were telling a Native story, they wanted to make sure that it was honoring and letting go of the old stereotypes that may occur. And they also wanted to get in some of those little things that only Native people would understand, but definitely is part of the fabric of who we are. I'm doing the same thing that my ancestors did. I'm just telling the stories that I care about and that I love, that are relevant to me. And now I get to do it in a way with an audience that's much larger. And they're seeing that, that as that Native culture we're much more than just what you see on TV or what you've seen on screen in the past, that we're alive and we're thriving and that we're able to be contemporary.
Jeffrey has works in the Smithsonian, in the Native American Museum in New York, and in the Smithsonian in DC, and he has designed whole hotel lobbies in Seattle. Murals, he's done murals. He's done several covers of Marvel. And I did tell you at the beginning that I wanted to bring a whole bunch of happiness, and I think I did that. However, in Jeffrey's case, we have to go deep. We have to. We just have to. And I'm not going to promise I'm not going to cry, and I'm not going to promise you're not going to cry. Okay? Reed brings you slowly through as many of Jeffrey's works as possible, I'm going to read Jeffrey's wife's update on Jeffrey. On September 16th, 22. He's going on 8 months in the hospital, and I'm so tired of my love not catching a break. I don't even know where to start, really, so I guess I'll start from the beginning. Yes, he's still at Swedish. He's currently in the ICU and back on a ventilator. It's been a month since he was discharged and readmitted, all within 18 hours. He arrived back at Swedish not only with breathing issues due to his untreated PTSD, but now with an injury to his prostate urinary tract thanks to the poorly placed catheter in the ER at St. Michael's. As if he didn't have enough issues to deal with. Because of the catheter injury, he was bleeding and passing large blood clots that required nearly 3 weeks of constant flushing via another catheter. I immediately requested a urologist be involved in treating him, and thankfully that's healing well and there's no permanent damage. After seeing how bad his anxiety can really get, his doctors are finally seriously treating his PTSD. So this means they have been starting and stopping a lot of new meds in the last month. With the new meds comes nausea and no appetite. He stopped wanting to eat, saying he wasn't hungry and was feeling nauseous all the time. To make matters worse, his PEG tube, I don't know what that means, keeps clogging, which means there are days when he's not getting adequate nutrition while they work out how to either unclog it or to switch out the tube entirely. He's had the tube switched out 2 times just last month. I keep asking why it's getting clogged and nobody can answer that, which is unacceptable to me. I'm beyond angry and frustrated in watching him lose more than 20 pounds in this last month. I was seeing a pattern we've been through before where he loses weight and gets too weak to sustain his breathing. I told his team last week my concerns and nobody listened to me as usual. Last weekend, I was able to stay 2 days straight with him. His nurses allowed me to have a weekend sleepover in his room. He was not in the ICU at that point. I started noticing over the weekend he was sleeping more and was short of breath and starting to not make sense in conversations. I again voiced my concerns that something wasn't right. Thankfully, the charge nurse on his floor listened to my concerns and she helped push for more testing on Sunday. A chest x-ray revealed he had aspiration pneumonia, which leads us to this week. Monday, he was moved to the ICU and immediately started on antibiotics. His body needed a break from working so hard to breathe, so he was intubated and placed on a ventilator. They kept him sedated all week to allow his body to rest. And yesterday he was given his third tracheostomy in a year. I've requested that he have this tracheostomy for much longer than the previous two. The most recent was in May. The ventilator will be necessary for him regaining and maintaining strength. The good news in all of this is that there have been no bacteria growth on any of the blood tests, so there is no active infection, thank God. I am praying he remains free from any infections. My level of anger and frustration is completely off the charts. After coming unglued on Monday, I've demanded for a second time a shift in team hierarchy and finally got it. The transplant surgeon is spinning Jeffrey in circles and I'm so done. There is no reason his ego should be overseeing medical issues Jeffrey has had, that there are specialists for and that don't involve his transplanted organs, which there have been inside this more than a year that he's been in there. I'm so done. Please continue to pray for Jeffrey, that he is able to regain his weight and strength that he has lost in the last month, that he remains free from infection, and that his feeding tube issues and nausea resolve. Please pray he catches a break soon. Lord knows if anyone deserves it, it's him. I love you all, Christina. He's been in for more than a year. He was supporting the family completely. There's 3 children. One graduated high school, I think, during this hospitalization, and another one's, I believe, in high school, and another one is in upper grade school, maybe middle school. I'm sorry, I don't have exact names and ages of the 3 kids. I've known Jeffrey since he was in middle school. He's the same age as my granddaughter's mother, same age as my oldest daughter. The first piece of art I ever saw of Jeffrey's was a drawing of Garfield on bended knee with wilting daisy saying, "Please, Bryna, will you go steady with me?" He was asking my daughter, and my daughter thought of him as a friend. So I dearly, dearly love Jeffrey. And I bought his first commercial, I don't know if you call it commercial piece of art. I bought a huge giant sun and a huge giant moon that are pop art and native in appearance, and I've seen him be on top. Bought a home in Silverdale for his family, and there was the minivan for the wife and the kids, and there was the job. There was the individual pieces of art that he was hired for, commissioned for, but then he had an actual job that he went to that had to do with comics and all that, and graphic arts, and to being in the hospital for more than a year, and they have house payments. Their car broke. She has to somehow get to a hotel that's near the hospital and maybe get to stay the night with him, and there's all this. We're talking about replacing an income and a car and supporting a family. Supporting a family that this man completely supported by himself and was doing just fine until he got lupus. So, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. This is Indigenous people's lives. And And this is a beautiful family that needs some help, that has survived by art. And one of his pieces of art, before he even ever had a bad day, was he heard about this single dad who had a hospital need. And so Jeffrey drew a piece of art and dedicated that piece of art and 100 prints for that family to sell, and for that money to go to that man's hospital needs. So he's done this for others, and now it's our turn to help Jeffrey and Christina and the 3 kids.